It was good, y'all. It's July 3rd, 4 in the morning, and welcome to Guy Talk Guy Talks about judging people. So, I don't know what the age demographic is of somebody who's listening to this, but as you go and understand more information, you'll realize that things are difficult at first, always. And sometimes things come naturally to you because they're very close to your existing knowledge base, but in general, you reach some stopping point where learning more information is hard. And there's some consolation where the information that exists out there is meant to be learned. Like a lot of the stuff that you learn in school and college has been learned and understood by someone, and they tried their best to be able to translate that to other people. So you don't have to do the hard part of discovering. But still, it that's our cope for trying to say that the world is meant to be understood, and that's not necessarily true. Even though we as humans have been equipped naturally with the tools to be able to understand the world to some extent. So, with that being said, if you as one person give get consolation that something is possible to be comprehended because somebody else has, that's very fair because you're equipped with the same set of tools to an extent. But we struggle from this hindsight bias of you learn something and then you're like, oh, that's so easy because you already understand it. You already have the pathway carved. And relative to somebody else, you're like, oh, how could you be so stupid? How could you not know that? How could you not understand that? But that's your own lived experience. It's like people who say English is really easy. English is not an easy language to learn. There's a lot of similar sounding words like tough, dough, so that have different spellings, or there's things with the same spellings like tough or dough, which result in different sounds. So no, like, not a fundamentally easy language to learn, and it's not super rules based. Like, of course, there's past tense, like past and had and did, and there's a lot of exceptions to those rules in which you just have to remember the conjugation, which is not something which a lot of English speakers think about. You kind of just know the word, which again makes it a difficult language to learn. So, just to establish that point, but when you start looking into learning language, it's a lot easier for somebody who's a native English or Spanish speaker, things that with Latin roots, or even French, things with a similar lexicographical base, right? Like the alphabet looks similar, to learn a language instead of something like Japanese or Chinese because they have a different alphabet. It's completely different. And then maybe something like Chinese is also more difficult, or Japanese is also more difficult because they have things like intonation or tones. Like Mandarin in particular has four tones, which is something which you as an English speaker may not think about when you are learning a language. And it takes more time to learn these new mechanics, the writing, which has a different alphabet, and then also the grammatical structure that follows that writing, maybe the structure that follows the writing as well. There's visual aspects to the way that characters and words are constructed in Mandarin, for example, which just aren't present in English, which make it more difficult to learn. So, how difficult something is to learn, your knowledge base is relative to your own lived experience. It's the same super fundamental argument with like the color blue, for example. I see the color blue a certain way, you see the color blue a certain way, but we both know it's blue because we're both looking at it. People discover language from their own origins. Language developed in all of these different areas, and then it turned into a societal construct that's relative to a lived experience that may or may not still exist. And even if it does still exist, it's an experience that you don't have as a lived individual unless you go live there, which grounds that language. So it's even more difficult to learn a language if you are not a part of the culture which experiences it. And even still, if you go to that culture, it's hard to learn it at the very start. So, what do I mean by all of this? There's a time and a place to criticize people for lacking knowledge. For example, people in America know a lot of American history, hopefully, that you've learned from your classes in elementary school, but people retain information differently. There's people paying for hundreds of thousands of dollars in education only to forget it right after they leave because their values in education might vary from you. Your values are informed by your parents, in which it's informed from your upbringing, something which is almost completely outside of your control, and how you decided to process those circumstances is also something which is unique to you. And the reason I say all of this is because when you learn something, it's something which is inherently informed from your unique disposition, from your own lived experience, and the way that you process language and feelings in the world, and everything is processed from you and your lived experience and your unique disposition. They say that the ground truth of the world is 20%, 80% of the world is how you react to it, and I very firmly believe this. So, the reason I really got super harrowed into this subject is because I once dated a girl from Berkeley, and in the most traditional sense, she seemed super woke, super in tune with the LGBTQ plus community. And the thing that alarmed me is this person was significantly smarter than me. It's honestly one of the reasons that we broke up, because it felt like that we could never speak the same language. This happened again to me, different girl, also a girlfriend that I had, same thing. Super woke, but I didn't really understand why. And that's not an issue. I'm not somebody who, this political affiliations aside, is particularly harrowing. I don't wish to tear people down. I don't wish to strip people of their knowledge. I am more for people's freedoms than less of them. But I still got harrowed because I did not understand something. I got canceled, in quotes, by my own girlfriend for something in which I just did not know better of because I came from different circumstances than them. And in order to protest me and my being of, well, you get the silent treatment, you get insulted, but the worst thing is you don't even get an explanation. And of course, like, you're young and you're immature, but this is something which happened in the LGBTQ plus community for a very long time, where they made all of these rapid changes and adjustments and expected the world to form to their beck and their call and their need, in which radical protest is a very real problem of social change, where if you protest through the means that were designed to be protested from, you may never get the result that you want, because the system may be designed in such a way in which meaningful change will never occur unless the people already in power wish for it to occur. Issues with a democracy is, how do you actually create a sense of urgency within your representatives? How do you keep them accountable? And does the structure of power allow you to keep them accountable? So in the case of the LGBTQ plus community that felt suppressed for a very long time and were under new circumstances that allowed them to express themselves safely, and safely as in they weren't experiencing violent crime, mostly social crime, which is much easier to deal with for a populace, they forced that radical change, lack of say, very boldly. And that put a lot of pressure on people, pressure on the common man, so to speak, common human, no A with an X if that makes you happy, to conform to this knowledge which they had no knowledge of. And instead of educating, I experienced a lot of shame, which may have just been the impression of young individuals. I think this is something which people have also noted in like third generation feminism, where instead of like you want equality, you want collateral to make up, you want equity to make up for the years of oppression, which isn't completely unfair, especially when you take a look at the black communities that got ripped apart by politicians with like highways. And if you really look like right after the Emancipation Proclamation, and you just turn all these people which you force into this country and have literally nothing to fend for themselves, and what else are they going to do but steal? Because they have nothing to their name. They have no means to build up in society. There was no equity. It was only inequity. So, something to think about. But that's honestly not completely unfair. But when you start demanding this of people who had no part of your oppression, who actually had no control over the circumstances that you became a part of, you are fighting a battle against people who are not against you, which is a fundamentally unfair thing. And this is another thing that you worry about when it comes to knowledge, and it's like, what, you need to pick your battles. You need to pick your battles against the people that are in control. You need to recognize the power structures and where they may fall short of you and your goals. And you also need to make sure not to divide each other. I think it's something that's super alarming that when we start looking at these knowledge echo chambers that are developed by social media algorithms, which aren't inherently malicious. You, as a developer, are tasked with making an algorithm that keeps people on your app as long as possible. You are optimizing for retention. And some people are really into the things that they already like. Other people are really engaged with the things that make them angry, that inspire your emotions. And then you start getting radicalized content which inspires and evokes emotions from people. This isn't necessarily alarming on its own, but when you start to see people engaging only with content which they find interesting, they start be turning into an echo chamber of their own information, right? You just keep getting interested in the same stuff over and over and over again, and you might only see the stuff that you agree with, you might only see the stuff that you disagree with, and then you have this disproportionate view of reality where you feel like the world is always against you, or you feel like the world is always with you. And then if you spend the majority of your time on social media or other media which is existing to keep your attention, you either do not have boredom and do not think of it for yourself, you have this feeling of agreeance and you've never received negative feedback, or you've never been pushed back upon enough or practice that critical thinking, and you feel like, oh no, I'll just take my safety with the online people that always agree with me, or I only surround myself with the yes men that always agree with me, or you always look for the disagreements and you're always finding a fight, or you're always angry. And this are all forms of dividing people. You don't get the feedback from real people, you only see the most radicalized opinions, you feel like the world is ending, everything's terrible, there's no kindness in the world, there's only kindness in the world. Like, these are all extremist opinions, and that's something scary, because we are losing the ability to think for ourselves. This is an informational problem. You originally had to find experts, you had to meet people, you had to have lived experience and draw conclusions in order to expand your knowledge base. Then people started getting libraries and public education, and you had esteemed figures like politicians and presidents in your government, and libraries and public education, which appeared to be at your service. They were supposed to help you. Now, we saw in places like the Philippines that this was not always the case. There was an American occupation in the Philippines. They taught the Filipino people to stay away from the creative arts and the liberties and the things that will give you social mobility. They taught you work. They taught you to be a working class. They taught you how to manufacture and join the factory lines, and how to be a docile, obedient, good worker, and where somebody else could cut the profit off the top and you'd have been none the wiser. And they don't teach you enough of the English language to understand the politics, just enough to understand your orders. So, completely besides the point, but even in America, you had an education system that used to be not inherently, but strongly connected to religion. And whether or not you consider that a form of brainwashing, they're pushing ideas onto you and taking away your ability to think for yourself. They wanted to appease this upper power, the government. There used to be a lot of trust in the government. There used to be a lot of trust in God. And to say, oh, why would you do this? Oh, you do it for God. Right? People used to do crusades. There's still a crusade of sorts going on right now. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get super political, but it is alarming when people lose the ability to think for themselves. You go to the library, you read a book, the book tells you what to think, but at least you're in control of choosing the book and consuming the knowledge. Now somebody chooses the book for you. You go to a website. The website used to be a super simple algorithm. It would just grab the thing that had the most other references to it. The same way that research does. The internet was actually designed to make research easier. And you go to that research you go to that website with the most references, and I was the first one that popped up, and you could keep scrolling. You get tens of thousands of results in a matter of fractions of a second, and you can keep going through those results based off of how many references they got. Now you have something which is supposedly better than a search engine. You have semantic search, which looks for the meaning and breaks apart your prompt not by keywords, but by the ideas, by the concepts, by some AI which you nor the creator fully understands how it operates, even if you understand how to make it. And that's alarming. That now you have something which is doing the heavy lifting for you, and it's not telling you if the sources are credible for you or not. It's just telling you what it believes to be fact. It cites its sources and expects you, the viewer, to determine for yourself if that is worthwhile knowledge, or if that is true, and to read the sources yourself, which of course, if you're any user of general AI, you know that that's not what you do. And the same thing goes for your social media. It's the idea of like, are you truly free? You know? And if you're hooked onto sugar or some substance, if your self-expression is inherently tied to consumerism, if your thoughts and your feelings and your actions are constantly informed by social media and the likes of the content in which you are provided for, in which you do not think for yourself, is this valid or valuable knowledge, or is this true, or how true it is, then you are not free, are you? Or at least not truly free, how some people like to believe that they are. And that's the big idea. And these are indispensable to a society, to be able to process information, to be knowledgeable of your government and its operations, and the power in which you have as a participant in that government. There is no freedom. There is no true freedom in the very fundamental sense of it. But going all the way back to the LGBTQ plus community that I originally was commenting on, I didn't feel free. I felt fear in those relationships for getting something wrong in which I wasn't even aware was there. It's controlling the controllables, right? I only know what I know. I'm informed by the people around me. A lot of the people which were very dissenting against the, or inherently homophobic, even if they didn't actually hate gay people. It could be something as easy as just saying ew when two men were kissing, or to ostracize guys from your traditional view of masculinity if they were in a homosexual interaction, or if they were in a relationship. It's not all sexual, but it kind of was. You're in high school, not that, whatever. And even saying things like, I think it was a slur, but the word sissy, someone really got mad at me for saying that once, and that was just like something which meant like pansy when I was growing up. But now it is a term that is derogatory towards a group of individuals. I think it's transgender or feminine appearing men. And this is all stuff that you are unaware of, and yet you get punished for it, for not knowing. And honestly, that's a good reflection of the real world out there too. You need to approach it with a great deal of sensitivity. Sensitivity that people may or may not train you. The safest answer is to just not say anything at all, because how could somebody misconstrue nothing? But it is the exact same issue of the trolley problem. If you do nothing, and you could have done something to improve somebody's situation, is that as bad as doing nothing? It's really easy to see action and comment and criticize action, but it's equally problematic, so to speak, or you see people should also be held accountable for inaction. What more could you do for the world and your community? And it's really easy to criticize visible action but not inaction, and it's really easy to advocate for something but not actually donate any of your money or your time towards helping something or a cause. I don't know if people see those reels about war or protest or whatever, but yeah, humanity. And all is that to say is that I feel very firm on not criticizing people for not knowing, because there is a difficult case to make for willful ignorance, in which even then you practice some of it in order for your health and well-being. I could not sleep and scroll politics and social media all day. I feel a sense of FOMO in a community that I feel strongly tied to, the soccer community, for not watching every single World Cup game, and yet I don't, because we have a limited amount of time, us as humans, and you can't spend it doing a little bit of everything. There is too much everything for you to do a little bit of all of it. And the same thing goes for deeply rooted communities, like any marginalized community. I cannot know all the ins and outs and history of your community, nor all of its developments, nor how to approach you the right way, but what I can do is I can listen to you, and I can care for you, and I can do my best to make you happy. And I can tell you what I am willing and I'm not willing to do, and you can judge whether you are willing or not willing to be my friend. And that was the same case with the girlfriends that I've had. That is the same case with anyone that you will ever meet in your life. It's like, are they in the same knowledge circles as you, and does that make you happy enough? Is this person qualified for your time? Which unfortunately is very transactional, but it is something which is meaningful for human connection and social ability. It's really hard to be friends with someone if you cannot even communicate with them. And a lot of people right now are experiencing this, some idealized view and romanticization, and they want people to do all the right things, and it's a part of some culture in which people have to be really well informed to be a part of, and we're just falling in love with a performance. But I like to think of this human connection, these relationships, this love that people feel is like, is somebody speaking the same language as me? Do I feel like that we can communicate to each other? Do I feel like I can translate myself in a way that they understand? And if you can get fulfillment from that, if you feel like people just do the right things, not only for the sake of doing the right things, but because you asked them to, and you were able to ask them to, and somebody who just gets you is unfortunately something which also stems from one's own knowledge base. Maybe their upbringing, maybe the upbringing that they were taught of or constructed by their society, and it just happens to align very well with you and your life, and it complements you. Maybe that's it. But the unfortunate answer is that sometimes you just don't know, and people can't know everything, and that should be okay. We should normalize that being acceptable. That's something I stand very firm on. And the important part beyond that, like to get something actually useful out of the pursuit of knowledge, is to try, listen, talk to people, be informed, and think critically about the information that is laid in front of you. What do you know? What do you not know? What is within your control? What is not within your control? Is this useful to me? Is this not? And that's it. That's my crash out. Alright, thank you for listening. I feel like there's a lot of points I could have elaborated on, but yeah, blanket layer is you don't know what you don't know, and try to learn, and that should be good enough. And realistically, it sucks when it's not, and that's just how it goes.